Welcome back to Capitol Review. I'm Mark Hall. A win for gun restriction advocates. The Supreme Court rejecting 2 cases, including not hearing Maryland's ban on so-called assault rifles, which means the ban can stay in place for now. The court did not explain its reasoning in turning down Maryland's case to ban guns like the AR-15, which have been used in mass shootings, and not hearing the case out in Rhode Island that bans high-capacity magazines. But Justice Brett Kavanaugh did indicate that he's skeptical such restrictions are constitutional and writes the Supreme Court will likely address the issue in the next term or 2. Turning to Capitol Review is Zach Schonfeld. He's the court and legal reporter with our media partners at The Hill. Zach, welcome back.
Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, we're always glad to have you. Let's talk about this court case. Why the Supreme Court ultimately decided not to take up this case.
Yeah, well, the Supreme Court gets about 5,000 to 6,000 requests to take up cases each year, and the vast majority are rejected. So much of the Supreme Court's power really is in the cases that they decide to take up and that decision. Here we are in June. A lot of the focus over the next month is going to be on the opinions they get out. But it's really at this earlier stage where they decide the 1% of cases of the requests they get to take up. That's where so much of their power lies. And so one of the big questions over the last year or two has been, where does the court's Second Amendment jurisprudence go from here now that the conservative majority has issued multiple major expansions of Second Amendment rights? And so one of the big questions has been these laws that are in Maryland and 8 other states that ban AR-15s and other weapons that these states call assault weapons, whether the Supreme Court will eventually take it up. And so people had really been keeping a close eye on this case, but yet again, the Supreme Court declining to take it up, at least for now.
Was this not a big enough case, Zach, or was this just sort of like the road that they've been down before?
I think the message that the Supreme Court was sending here is telling folks on this issue to come back a little bit later. And that's because the key number to remember here is 4. It takes 4 justices to vote to take up a case. And we know that in this case coming out of Maryland, there were 3 of the court's Republican appointees that wanted to hear this case, that being Justices Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, and Neil Gorsuch. But then in addition to that, we also got a 3-page written statement from another justice, Brett Kavanaugh, Trump's second appointee to the court, where he said, yes, I didn't vote to take up this case, but he said that he wants to give this a little bit more time to percolate in the lower courts, and that down the road he would be inclined to take it up soon. So that's really a pretty strong indicator that, assuming those 3 other justices, continue voting to take up these sorts of cases, all it takes is for Justice Kavanaugh in the future to take up a case down the road, and the Supreme Court will have another big Second Amendment case on their docket. So although they're not taking this one up out of Maryland, it seems very likely that the Supreme Court in the near future is going to take up this matter.
You mentioned Justice Kavanaugh. You also mentioned AR-15s. He did allude to the fact that the court could take up or make a ruling on the AR-15. What could we expect?
Yeah, it seems that now that they've denied this case out of Maryland, maybe it won't be the Maryland law that becomes the vehicle for the Supreme Court to firmly decide whether AR-15s are arms protected by the Second Amendment, but there are a number of other cases proceeding across the country. Maryland is one of 9 states that bans AR-15s and other assault weapons. 9 states, I should also mention, 9 states plus D.C., so a case could also come out of D.C. So it's possible now that the Supreme Court will eventually take up this issue of AR-15s from one of these other Democratic-led states that has passed a similar law. And that could stand to impact Maryland's law, whatever the court decides. So the bottom line here is that Maryland's assault weapons ban is being upheld for now, but it's very possible that in the next few years the picture changes.
Zach Schonfeld, thank you so very much for joining us.
Thanks, Mark.